Alright, welcome back to part 2 of our Anime Girl tutorial. Same disclaimers as before, I'm using Clip Studio Paint, but any application will work, and you can also do this just with pencil and paper. Just be sure that when you're doing your construction lines, you keep it very soft, so that way if you erase and need to change anything up, then those construction lines will not show through on the finished project. So just draw very faintly, and you'll be good to go. For me, I'm just using my lowermost layer is at 30% opacity, and I'm using red so that way my lines stand out very clearly. So, to just get right into it, I'm just continuing the tutorial from last time, so I'm just drawing the same proportion character. Now, of course, an easy way to get it exactly proportioned is to just copy over, switch it over, and make small adjustments. However, for the sake of just showing you how to actually set up the character in case you're starting from a backwards position, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show it from start to finish. So again, I'm going to draw a very small circle. Your circle doesn't have to be perfect. It's just going to be a placeholder shape here. I will use a ruler here just to ensure my center line is dead straight. So I'll drop that in, and we're just going to try to balance our character on either side of that line. So I am going to just drop in my jaw again, right, like so. Lots of little lines until I get an overall shape that I like. That's all I'm doing right here. Gonna kind of keep it somewhat cleaned up just so it's a little bit easier to see what I'm up to here. Next, I'm going to drop in my shoulder lines. So I'll just keep it straight across like so. We're not doing fancy poses, we're just trying to figure out the balance and things like that. We can do different poses later, but for now, it's keeping it simple. I am then roughly the same width of my head. I'm going to drop in this oval shape for the rib cage. Try your best to keep it pretty even on both sides. And just barely inside of that rib cage, I'm going to drop in 2 circles beneath our shoulder line for our shoulders. Now the shoulders aren't perfect circles, so those are just placeholders. So don't worry too much about getting them perfect. From there, I'm just going to try to even this up a little bit. Now, the overall shape on your character is just going to depend here based on how muscular they are. For this, we're just doing sort of a classic anime girl, so she's not going to be very muscular. So because of that, we just kind of want to give her a straight line that follows the widest part of the rib cage, like so. So that's sort of where the lats and stuff are going to be. Your lats are right here. So we don't want to make them too bulgy or expressed, otherwise they start looking a little bit too muscular. Next, what we'll do is, starting from basically the very edge of the shoulder, we're just going to add these 2 lines for our traps. We don't want them to be very big either, for the same reason mentioned for the lats, because she's not a very muscular character. Next, we will add in our neck, and this time just bring it straight over the jaw. Use whatever neck shape you want. I like the look of them slightly concave like this, and I'm just going to add this. This is the base of the neck right here. So the jaw will not be visible, like so. Next, kind of under our shoulders, I'm going to drop in the shoulder blade. So these basically connect like this, but we're just seeing the slight lines of them. I'm just going to move this one a tiny bit closer to the other, like that. Drop some quick ears. Alright, from there we want to add in our hip line. So again, from the base of the rib here, basically like half a head height. You know, so if I had a second head down here, this would roughly be the halfway point here. And as mentioned in our video 1 here, you can make the hips as wide as you want. I'm making them shoulder width and try to keep them even here. Then roughly just a little like jaw length down beneath them. I'm gonna mark out where I'll bring the base of the hips, like so. Zoom out here. This hip is a lot longer than our other one, so I'm just gonna make that adjustment like so. And drop that in. Alright, from there, I will then come up with this shape. And remember, right here is the part of the hips that is going to be visible and doesn't move. So I'm going to first add a little lines down here. This is also an unmovable spot, and so is right here. So I'm going to attach those just so we can see what is unmovable, because then I will attach my love handles basically right to that point. And again, I use this shape for this character, but you can use this, you can use this, you can use this, you can use whatever shape you want. Now, the important part here is, see our center line right here? Girls typically have curvy spines, so if she was like to the side, she'd be looking like this, right? So, to capture that, we are barely going to dip in and out of that line. That is just going to show us that there's actually curve here, not that it's just straight up and down. So it's the tiniest little dip, like so. So throw that in. From there, we'll just drop in your elbows and arms real quick. Again, put your elbow circles just below the base of where the ribs would be. So these little lines here, the base of the ribs where it kind of opens up. You want your elbows just below that. You want it so your hands from this position are basically even with your shoulders. So I'm going to drop that in. I'm going to connect this since our forearm is behind the first portion of the arm here, the biceps and triceps, elbow joint, and we'll connect them like so. So I'm just kind of keeping this shape for them. Attach them like that. We're not trying to do anything too fancy for the hands here. We're just using these as placeholders. Basically like that. And this hand is slightly too big, so I'm just going to shrink it down ever so slightly. So, from here, I'm going to draw in little circles in the hips like so. I'm going to then flick down my legs slightly like a little V shape here. So they're coming at each other. So I can just do this one right. There we go. Then I'm going to establish where my feet would be. So from here, I'm just going to put a slightly rounded triangle shape here for my heel, as well as just on the sides, just to show where the toes would be. Now, roughly the halfway point should be around here. I'm going to put oval shapes like so, and that is our knee line. So since this character's turned away from us, we're seeing the back of the knee, so the little socket area. So it's going to look a little bit different from the back than it does from the front. But I still start basically the same, where I'm just going to drop in the inner thigh like so. Just using lots of little lines just until I find the shape I like. Again, I'm coming in, out, back in, like that. And this one's kind of getting away from me here. Don't want it to be too thick for this character. We'll squeeze it in a little bit more. From there, draw it in even more. Alright. From there, we're going to drop in the outer thigh, which is going to be at its thickest more near the top, like this portion right here. So this shape is a little bit off for me. Like so. Then for the calves, instead of having any straight portion, because we're looking from the back, so we're actually going to see both bumps from the actual calf muscle. So just below that socket, I'm going to put in this shape. So out, back, in, kind of like an exaggerated forearm. Then either side of it, I'm just bringing up these shapes, because the knee socket's going to be basically in here with your calf, kind of like that. I'll do that. From here, we now just need to add in the glutes. So what I like to do for the glutes is, so this is our little line that we just threw in right here, the back. Kind of following that is we're going to add in a round shape, like so. Now, we really want this round shape to really suck in at the bottom, right, like that. It's going to come down and then really aggressively curve in. Mine is a little bit too far from our center line that we made. I'm just going to bring it in a little, because we want it to slightly poke out from the center line, just because the glutes have a little bit of volume to them and curve, so it's not going to be just perfectly flat. We're going to throw it in. So from here, we're just going to verify that our character is the height we want. Mine basically is, so I'm really just going to run with it. It's pretty close to the other one, so call it good. So now I'll just get through the line art section here. And again, same as before, depending on what you're trying to accomplish here with your line art, if you're doing an actual finished piece that you want to upload and stuff, then consider what color your line art is to match the overall warmth or coolness of your picture. If you're drawing a warm one, use a dark red, or consider using a dark red. And then if you're using a cool sort of color palette, then consider using a dark blue for your line art. Kind of helps it blend in a little bit better and will help you highlight your line art should you need to do so. However, for me, I'm just doing a basic figure study, so I'm just using black. I'm also not going to be using numerous layers. I'm just sketching in the shapes that I want. So my line art isn't going to be anything special here. Put in my ears. Since we're seeing the ears from the back, we're not going to really see any detail on them. You might see a little low bump, but that's about it. Neck into the traps, all one line, since she's not very muscular, like so. Trying to keep it even though. Apparently I'm struggling to do. There we go. Then I'm going to essentially make almost a straight line. I kind of come in, out, back down, but so slightly, just so that way it has a tiny bump over the ribs, back out into the armpit area, which would be the lats right here. And I'm going to add in my little shoulder blade area, tiny baseline right there. Connect my shoulders again. I slightly come in like so. That gives the shoulders a little bit nicer shape. Do the same over here. I'm going to drop in our forearm into our hand. It's not a hand tutorial, so we're just using little placeholders here. And try to connect the base of your forearm to the base of the elbow here, since those are integrally linked. From there, we'll throw in our tiny little swoop that shows that the middle of the back here is actually curved. Then, just like from the front, I like just throwing in the hips here. Since they're unmovable, everything kind of has to work around them. They're not going to move around for us. So throwing it in now can be a little bit more helpful. So I'm going to throw those in. Just going to throw in our glutes. Trying to follow the shape that I liked. Like so. And keep the very base of your glutes here as even as you can, since she's not walking or moving around. It's just going to remain relatively the same height. Then I'll just throw in my outer line, inner line, like so. I'll kind of erase this a little bit just so I can then add the swoops, because this is where all the tendons are. So I'll kind of follow it with a little socket there. Then my calves. Followed with my slightly rounded triangle shapes, which are the placeholders for the heel. And keep in mind the ankles are higher on the inside than they are on the outside. So because of that, I'm just going to throw those in just so you can kind of see where they're actually positioned. And there you go. And depending on the size of your character's chest, you might see them just barely poking out like so. If they're really large, then you'd probably see them up above as well. But for this character, they're not anything too crazy. So we'll call that good. And there you go. That is the same character that we drew before, but from the back. Looks like this hip for me is a little bit more pointed than what I would like, so I'm just gonna smooth it down ever so slightly. Since I'm going for a hip design that's a mix between pointed and smooth. I don't want it too sharp, but I don't want it too smooth either. So, either way, that is the end of this tutorial, and hopefully this is helpful for you and can help you in your own